Hello, everybody. My name is Hala. Welcome back to the series where we're dealing with Flutter programming. We're trying to simplify a lot of the concepts. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about simple Flutter animations. More specifically, we're going to be talking about the animated container. So, at the end of the video, you're going to be learning to do applications such as this, where you have a container and you click on a button, you animate the height and the width of the container. Okay. Very, very simple code. Let's go ahead and see how we can do this. Before that, let's delete all of this so that we can start from scratch. Okay. Now, as always, the first thing you have to import is package flutter material dot. Okay. Now, something that's constant throughout the series is the void main function. Also, you just run app const material app and home will be home, which will be our widget. Now, since there are two states here, we're going to be using a stateful widget. For that, you do ftful, click the enter button and call our widget. Okay. Once you do that, you get our home state, which is where we make changes for the state, and this is something that I'll just call that home state. Okay. Now, before we move further, let's remove this constant placeholder and replace this with a scaffold so that we could add a lot of stuff inside that. Okay. From there, let's go ahead and add an app bar also. Maybe before that, I will just run this code to see you get no output right now. Let's go ahead and add an app bar. That's something that's common throughout the series also. So I'll just maybe copy paste that stuff over here. So you can see in previous videos, we have explained what we're doing here. This is an app bar. We set the background color. We set the title, which would be simple animation application. We set the style, which is nothing but text style. And we put the color of the text to be white and the color of the background to be purple, right? Center title, true, this parameter will center our title. So if I press the save button now, you can see that we get our app bar done and ready. Okay. So let's go ahead with the body now. And for the body, we'll use a column widget because we'll have one button and one container, right? I think that's a lot easier if we have the column widget. So when you have the column widget, you have the children, but before that, you have an alignment property also. So let's go ahead and set the cross axis alignment to the center of the screen. So that'll be cross axis alignment, or maybe I axis alignment dot center. Okay. Once this is done, we can actually go ahead and write the children also. Now, as I discussed before, we're going to be talking about an animated container. Okay. When you're talking about an animated container, you're going to have a height, a width, and a duration. Okay. Here's all the properties that you have. You can also hover over this to see what all the properties that it has along with its data types. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be setting a height. Maybe I'll set this 200, and then I'll set a width. I'll set that to 200 also. And then I'll go ahead set a color. So color will be colors dot red, followed by a duration, which will be duration seconds is to 1. Okay. So you can add number of days, number of hours, number of minutes. So that will be the time in which this animation takes place. So we'll have this animation for 1 second right now. That's my duration is 1 second. Okay. Now once this is done, this part is over, this right here. So if I actually press the save button now, you can see that we get the container right there. Then I'll also have a button that I can press to go ahead and manipulate this container. For that, let me just go ahead and set a floating action button, right? Now, when I add a floating action button, I'm actually supposed to write a function called onPressed. For that, let me just give you an empty function right now. Maybe if I save this, you can see that I have a button right here. Now, obviously, you can go ahead and add a child also inside this button. So you do child, and then inside that, let's just wrap a text widget saying plus, for example. You can see I get plus right here. When I click this, nothing happens, but this is the basic code for application. Now let's go ahead and dive into the logic on what that is that we're going to be doing. When I click the plus button, I'm going to be manipulating the height and the width. Something to keep in mind is when I am manipulating the height and the width, it should not be hard coded. This should be referring to some variable which I will change in this function right here. So let's go ahead and create that variable first. So I'm going to be over this override line. What I will do is I will create an integer called height. I'll set that to 200. Similarly, I'll set an integer called width and I'll set that to 200. Now, something to keep in mind is, should it be an integer? Well, Let's go ahead and see once more what animated container needs for its variables. It needs double, right? So instead of going for an integer, we'll actually go for a double over here, so that we don't have to convert things later on when we are passing this into the parameters. Okay. Once I'm able to do that, I can just pass this height over here, and similarly, I can pass this width also over here, right? Maybe once I'm done with that, I refresh. You see that it's the same thing as it was before. Now I have to add the functionality over there. How do you add this functionality? Now let's come back with this. In my on pressed in the function, what I will do, since this is a stateful widget, I will go ahead and call the set state method. In that set state, what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate the width and the height. Now, how will I do that? I'll say if my width is 200, set the width and the height to be 400. If it is 400, set it back to 200. Okay. So what I will do here, I will just simply check if this width is nothing but 200. In that case, what I will do is I will set this width to 400, and I will also set the height to 400. Okay. Now, else what happens if this is not the case? Let us write that also. In that case, well, let me set the width back to 200, and let me set the height back to 200. Well, is that it? Hello? Well, actually, yes. So I click this button, you can see our animation goes through. Now, should I animate both of these? That is not actually necessary. So if I remove this height thing from here, maybe I'll remove this line alone. I'll save this again. You can see that it only animates the width. Now I'm going to change the seconds to 2 now, and let's see what happens. Maybe I'll save this first. You can see that it goes slower. Maybe I'll set it to 10 so that you can see how slow it can actually go through. You can see that it goes through very slow. Now, as we discussed before, not only seconds, you also have milliseconds. So you can't do 0.5, 0.25 since this is an integer value. It does not go to the decimal places. But in that case, you can actually go to, instead of specifying this to seconds, you can set this to milliseconds, and maybe I'll change this to 200 milliseconds or something like that. It goes by very fast. Okay. So this is how an animated container works. I hope this video helped you. It sheds some light into what we are doing here. If it did, hit that like button. Obviously, all of this code will be in the GitHub repository. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in another video. Until then.